My fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel as I stared at the lit-up facade of Pulse, Chicago's most popular gay club. At 39, I, Cameron Parker, a respected and discreet investment banker, rarely ventured into places like this. Neon lights pulsed like warnings to my meticulously controlled routine. My professional life demanded absolute discretion about my sexuality, especially given the conservative clients I managed and my own insecurities as a Chinese American trying not to draw attention. "Come on, you promised a night out," I texted Olivia, my best friend and roommate, who was supposed to meet me 20 minutes ago. Her reply came instantly. "Work emergency. Go without me. Who knows, maybe you'll meet someone interesting." I took a deep breath. Maybe a quick, chill drink wasn't such a bad idea, even if I was on my own. After all, no one from the bank ever went to this side of town. If you've ever felt that unsettling sensation that a seemingly simple decision was about to turn your life upside down, hit that like button right now. My penthouse apartment overlooking Lake Michigan was my refuge. I woke up religiously at 5:30, ran 8 kilometers, checked the Asian markets before they opened, and arrived at the office impeccably dressed before 8. Every minute of my day was orchestrated like a military operation. Meetings, strategic lunches, international calls synced across time zones. My life was predictable, organized, and above all, compartmentalized. At night, I returned to my sterile apartment with minimalist furniture and carefully selected abstract art. Olivia used to joke that my home looked like a soulless design catalog. She wasn't entirely wrong. I avoided personal photos or anything that revealed too much about me. Weekends followed a similar routine: gym, reading reports, occasional dinners with colleagues where superficial conversations replaced genuine connections. I visited my parents once a month, skillfully dodging any questions about dating or marriage. Their traditional Chinese outlook made it impossible to discuss my sexuality, so we stayed in this silent standoff. Inside Pulse, the energy was something I'd forgotten existed. Loud music, pulsating lights, and hundreds of people living openly, without any social masks. I found a relatively quiet corner at the bar and ordered a double whiskey. "First time here?" a deep, musical voice said from my right. I turned and found a pair of piercing green eyes studying me with curiosity. The man looked about 33, with a perfectly trimmed beard and a confident smile. "Is it that obvious?" I replied, embarrassed by how clearly out of place I felt. "You look like a fish out of water in that $3,000 suit." He extended his hand. "I'm Derek Collins, a graphic designer and regular here." "Cameron Parker," I answered automatically as I shook his hand, and instantly regretted using my real name. Derek ordered a round of drinks, and we started talking. While I was calculating risks and consequences, he flowed with a disarming ease. He talked openly about his design studio, his passion for brutalist architecture, and hilarious stories of eccentric clients. There were no filters, no caution, just pure authenticity that left me both fascinated and uneasy. "You need to see this place in natural light," Derek commented as we walked along the lakefront the following morning. After hours of conversation at Pulse, we ended up at a 24-hour cafe discussing everything from foreign policy to our favorite Wong Kar-wai movies. The rising sun turned Chicago into a golden painting. I watched Derek photographing the urban landscape with the keen eye of an artist, completely different from my pragmatic view of the city as a financial center. Over the next few days, our lives started intertwining in unexpected ways. Derek dragged me to an underground art exhibit in an abandoned warehouse where he introduced me to friends who welcomed me without judgment. I returned the favor by taking him to my favorite Cantonese restaurant, hidden in the basement of an old building, where the chef served dishes off the official menu. "You always need that control, don't you?" Derek asked, as I meticulously rearranged the chopsticks on the table. "And you're always so impulsive," I shot back, watching him grab food straight off my plate. Our differences, instead of clashing, created a strangely intriguing mutual curiosity. "Parker, I need those reports for lunch with the Wilsons," my boss demanded on a hectic Monday. Spencer Wilson, the arrogant heir and son of our biggest client, was in town. My phone buzzed with a message from Derek suggesting lunch. I had to cancel, once again. It was the third time that week our plans were derailed by work emergencies. "All right, Mr. Busy. Maybe one of these days you'll officially let me into your schedule," Derek replied with a smiley emoji, though I could sense the frustration between his lines. That afternoon, Spencer Wilson cornered me in the elevator. "Hey Parker, weren't you at Pulse last week? My cousin thinks she saw you there." His casual tone carried a hidden threat. My blood ran cold. "Must be a mistake," I replied curtly, while calculating the implications. The Wilson account represented 30% of our department's revenue. That night, when I saw Derek waiting on the sidewalk in front of my building, panic set in. The separate spheres of my life were colliding. The career I had meticulously built, my parents' expectations, my carefully guarded identity, all suddenly seemed vulnerable because of this man who smiled openly at me, unaware of the whirlwind his presence stirred. "Are you just going to stand there staring at me, or will you invite me in?" Derek asked, interrupting my moment of panic. His confident smile contrasted with my obvious discomfort. I quickly assessed my options: push him away and reinforce the wall between my identities, or allow him into the sanctuary I had so carefully isolated from the rest of my life. For some inexplicable reason, I chose the second option. "Sorry, rough day at work," I murmured, leading him into the elegant lobby. The doorman raised his eyebrows slightly. I never brought visitors. In the elevator, Derek looked at my reflection in the mirror. "You look different when you wear that corporate mask. More rigid, almost unrecognizable." His words pierced my carefully constructed facade. No one had ever described me so accurately. My apartment, with its immaculate and sterile decor, suddenly felt exposed under Derek's curious gaze. He walked slowly around the space, examining every detail as if he could decode my secrets through the meticulously organized objects. "Drink?" I offered, clinging to some formality. "Sure, because that's exactly what we need." "More barriers," Derek replied as he stepped closer. "Cameron, do you have any idea how exhausting it is to watch you build and rebuild these walls all the time?" The room seemed to shrink. The air conditioner hummed quietly, the only sound aside from our breathing. The city sparkled outside the panoramic window, thousands of lights forming an urban constellation. "I don't know how to do it," I finally confessed. "My whole life's been built in carefully separated compartments. Work, family, and everything else." "And I'm the everything else?" Derek asked, not with anger but genuine curiosity. "You're a variable I can't categorize," I admitted honestly. Derek moved closer, reducing the space between us to just a few centimeters. I caught his cologne, notes of bergamot and cedar, and realized I had memorized his scent without even noticing. "What if, just for tonight, you stopped trying to categorize me?" His voice was almost a whisper. "What if you just felt, without analyzing?" The touch of his fingers on mine sent an electric jolt through my body. My analytical mind, trained to calculate risks and predict outcomes, finally went silent when his lips met mine. Our bodies came together like continents long separated, recognizing each other as if through geological time. Derek unfastened my tie with a skill that showed experience, while I awkwardly fumbled with the buttons on his shirt. "You always overthink," he murmured against my skin, guiding my hands. "Let your body lead, not your mind." Allowing myself to let go of control was like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and liberating at the same time. Derek led me down the hallway to my bedroom, where the full moon poured silver light through the open curtains, transforming the minimalist space into something almost mystical. Our bodies moved in an ancient dance, a ritual of discovery and surrender. Every touch from Derek revealed years of pent-up restraint. Where I was hesitation, he was certainty. Where I was doubt, he was absolute affirmation. "Are you thinking about work now?" he teased as he trailed a path of kisses down my abdomen, making every nerve in my body come alive. "Impossible," I replied, my voice husky and almost unrecognizable to my own ears. When our bodies finally merged completely, it was like decades of repression exploding in flames, turning my sterile apartment into the epicenter of an emotional earthquake that forever demolished the walls I had built around my true self. Our synchronized breathing created a rhythm that drowned out any awareness of the outside world. Under Derek's skilled touch, my body responded like an instrument long neglected in the hands of a master. I revealed parts of myself I hadn't even known existed, vulnerabilities and desires buried beneath years of denial. Derek discovered them one by one like an archaeologist delicately uncovering fragile treasures. "Are you with me?" he whispered at one point, his green eyes fixed on mine, seeking a connection beyond the physical. "I'm here, completely," I replied, surprising even myself with the sheer sincerity. Our movements grew more urgent, intensifying as the control I maintained over every aspect of my life dissolved completely. I surrendered to that moment, letting my body express truths that my mind had always censored. When we reached the peak of that experience together, it was as if something fundamental broke inside me. not in a painful way, but in a liberating one. A dam giving way after decades of holding back turbulent waters. My body trembled with the force of the release, while Derek held me tightly, anchoring me through that storm of sensations. For a transcendent moment, there was no Cameron the banker, no Cameron the obedient son. There was only me, stripped of masks and expectations, completely present in my most essential truth. We collapsed side by side, panting, skin against skin. The city continued its relentless pulse beyond the windows, indifferent to the transformation that had taken place within those walls. Time seemed to suspend in the space between breaths, a perfect moment of absolute clarity. "Has your mind started working again?" Derek asked after a few minutes, tracing invisible patterns on my chest. "How did you know?" "Your breathing changed. It's slower, more measured." He propped his elbow up to study me better. "What are you processing right now?" "Everything," I confessed. "What this means. What happens tomorrow. If anyone at work finds out." Derek sighed, rolling onto his back. "And so we go back to business as usual." The alarm rang mercilessly at 5:30, as always. For a disorienting moment, having another body in my bed felt like being in a particularly vivid dream. Derek slept soundly, one arm thrown over the pillow, completely at ease in my space. I watched him breathe, memories of the previous night washing over me in waves. There was a raw beauty in his sleeping vulnerability that contrasted with the confidence he showed when awake. I realized I wanted to know every facet of him, an alarming revelation for someone who had spent adult life avoiding deep connections. In the bathroom, I examined my reflection, searching for visible changes. Physically, I looked like the same Cameron Parker, but something fundamental had shifted inside. It was as if my body had finally aligned with a truth my mind had spent decades denying. When I returned to the bedroom, Derek was awake, watching the city come alive. "Good morning, banker." His smile carried a different quality, less provocative, more intimate. "I suppose your day is already completely planned out." I hesitated. My morning routine was sacred. Run, check Asian emails, meticulously prepare for the day. Breaking it would be admitting that something had fundamentally changed. "Actually," I responded slowly, "I was thinking about grabbing breakfast out today." Derek's surprise was worth that small act of rebellion against my own rigidity. At a small cafe a few blocks away, I watched Derek animatedly chatting with the waitress. His social ease, so different from my calculated reserve, was at once fascinating and intimidating. "What's up?" he asked, noticing my fixed stare. "How do you do it? Live so openly?" Derek considered the question for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "It wasn't always like this. I spent my teenage years in a small town in Texas, hiding who I was. When I got to Chicago, I was determined to never live halfway again." "And your work? Don't your clients mind?" "Some do," he admitted. "I lost projects for being who I am, but I gained others precisely because of it. In the end, authenticity attracts the right people, in life and in business." His philosophy was as foreign as it was attractive to me. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine what life would be like without compartments, fully integrating every part of who I am. My phone buzzed insistently. Spencer Wilson had moved up our meeting to 9 a.m., shattering my carefully planned morning. Reality resumed its unrelenting grip. "I have to go," I said, leaving money on the table. "Work emergency." Derek's expression faltered for a brief moment. "Sure, there's always a work emergency." Something in the resignation of his voice struck me deeply. I realized I was repeating a familiar pattern, pushing him away at the moment when intimacy threatened the structured life I'd built. "Derek," I hesitated, a fierce internal battle sending my heart racing. "I'd like to see you again, not just as a casual date, as something more defined." The smile that lit up his face eased some of my anxiety. "Cameron Parker, are you asking me for a relationship? Because that would mean you'd have to reorganize those perfectly arranged compartments of your life." "I'm considering a renovation," I replied, surprising even myself with my impromptu metaphor. In the taxi on the way to the bank, for the first time in years, the anxiety about work was overtaken by another kind of anticipation. My body still bore the invisible marks of the night before, not just physical, but a deeper imprint, as if Derek had unlocked doors within me I never knew existed. At reception, James Hawkins, a senior colleague who was openly gay, waved at me. I had always kept a professional distance from him, fearing association by proximity. Today, I returned his greeting with a genuine smile. "New cologne?" James asked as we got into the elevator. "Bergamot and cedar? Nice choice." I blushed when I realized I was wearing Derek's cologne. a small trace of my transformative night, sneaking into my professional sanctuary. Strangely, the sky didn't fall. The elevator kept rising, the bank kept operating, and I discovered that maybe, just maybe, the compartments of my life could start talking to each other without collapsing completely. When the elevator doors opened, I took a deep breath. Spencer Wilson waited in the hall, his calculating gaze appraising me. But something had changed. For the first time, I didn't feel diminished under his scrutiny. The night with Derek had given me a strength I never knew I had. The strength of authenticity. Even if it was temporary, even if it was fragile, it was there, like a seed just planted. 3 months had passed since that first night with Derek. Our relationship evolved at a pace that defied my calculated nature. Some nights of the week, his apartment in the artsy Wicker Park became my refuge from corporate pressures. Other times, he invaded my minimalist space with elements of his vibrant personality. Plants, art books, a crocheted throw made by his grandmother that looked absurdly out of place on my Italian designer sofa. But beneath that apparent normality, a storm was brewing. Spencer Wilson had stepped up his covert campaign against me. Casual comments about my personal life in meetings, questions about my artist friend in front of conservative clients, even a suggestion to transfer me to the Dubai office, where you'd gain valuable international experience, Parker. On one especially tense Friday, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside were photos of Derek and me leaving Pulse, chatting intimately at a cafe, and my stomach dropped, holding hands in a park. Attached was a simple note, thinking of what's best for your career. I canceled all my appointments for the afternoon and went for a walk along Lake Michigan's edge. Autumn turned the trees into bursts of red and gold, while I contemplated the potential ruins of the 20-year career I'd built. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from Derek, from my boss, even a rare call from my mother. I ignored them all. When I finally got to Derek's apartment that night, he looked worried. "Where have you been? I tried calling you all day." In response, I tossed the envelope with the photos onto his desk. Derek studied them carefully, his face hardening. Who did this? Spencer Wilson, son of the bank's biggest client. I helped myself to a generous swig of Derek's whiskey. He wants to force me out, or at least transfer me somewhere else. Derek was silent for a long moment. And what are you going to do? The question lingered between us, heavy with implications. In that moment, I realized we weren't just talking about Spencer or my job, but about a choice: to keep living divided or finally integrate the fractured pieces of my identity. I haven't decided yet, I admitted honestly. Derek's silence said more than any words. He picked up the photos and placed them back in the envelope. "When you decide, let me know," he finally said in a measured voice. "Because I'm in love with you, Cameron. But I can't love just a fraction of you while the rest remains locked away." That night, we slept back to back. Physically close, emotionally distant. In the morning, I left early, murmuring excuses about meetings at the bank, even though it was Saturday. On Sunday afternoon, my parents invited me to dinner, our monthly ritual. Sitting at the familiar table in Rogers Park, I watched my father carefully pour tea, following the same ritual he'd done since my childhood. "Son," my mother began, exchanging glances with my father, "we know someone we think you'd like to meet. The Zhao's daughter, remember her? She's a doctor now." Something inside me broke. After 40 years living under expectations, mine, theirs, the bank's, exhaustion hit me like a physical wave. "Mom, Dad," I said calmly, placing my chopsticks on the table. "I'm seeing someone." My mother smiled, relieved. "Oh, how wonderful! Why didn't you bring her today? What's her name?" "His name is Derek," I replied, my heart pounding. "We've been together for 3 months." The silence that followed was thick as fog. My father froze, cup halfway to his mouth. My mother blinked several times as if processing a complex equation. "Is he your friend?" my father finally asked, offering an easy out. "He's my partner, Dad," I said carefully, choosing each word. "And he's teaching me that I can be successful at work without sacrificing who I really am." Another pause. Then, surprisingly, my mother took my hand. "Are you happy?" she asked in Mandarin, her mother tongue reserved for the most sincere moments. "Yes," I replied in the same language. "For the first time in a long time." She nodded slowly. "Then we want to meet him. This Derek." The rest of dinner passed in an uncertain emotional terrain. But when I left, I felt a little lighter. Their acceptance wasn't complete, not immediate, but it was a start. The next morning, I walked into the bank with a renewed determination. I requested a meeting with the full board, including legal and human resources. My secretary looked at me as if I'd lost my mind, but she made the arrangements. At 10 a.m., I found myself facing the 15 most powerful executives of the bank, including Mr. Wilson himself, Spencer's father. I placed the envelope with the photos in the center of the table. For the past 2 months, I've been the target of systematic harassment and discrimination based on my sexual orientation, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. I have complete documentation, including emails, voicemails, and these photos taken without my consent. The shock was palpable in the room. Mr. Wilson took the photos, his face reddening as he recognized the source. I've worked at this institution for 20 years, I continued. I lead the team with the highest client retention rate and best performance in the last 5 years. My sexual orientation has never affected my performance, and it won't in the future. I paused, looking each director in the eye. However, the culture of discrimination that has allowed this behavior is undermining the potential of this bank, and I'm here not only to defend my position, but also to propose structural changes to our inclusion policies. Over the next 2 hours, I presented a detailed plan to transform the bank into an inclusion model in the financial sector. When I finished, a tense silence filled the room. It was James Hawkins who spoke first. I fully support this proposal, and I suggest we consider Cameron to lead this initiative as part of his new responsibilities as director. A week later, Spencer Wilson was transferred to the Singapore office. I got a promotion and the task of implementing the new corporate diversity program. And, more importantly, I stopped hiding who I was. The night I received the official news, I went straight to Derek's apartment. I found him working in his studio, focused on a new project. "We need to talk," I said, my tone serious and alerting him. "You've made your decision," he concluded, bracing himself for the worst. "Yes," I confirmed, allowing myself a rare smile. "I decided I don't want to live divided anymore. I confronted my parents. I confronted the bank. And now I'm here to ask you." "Yes?" Derek looked at me, hope cautiously shining in his eyes. "Would you consider moving into my apartment? It's bigger, has better lighting for your studio. And honestly, that awful throw of yours already seems at home on my Italian sofa." Derek's smile lit up his whole face. "Cameron Parker, are you asking me to live with you?" "I'm asking for more than that," I replied, surprising both of us with my boldness. "I'm asking us to build a life together. No compartments, no masks. Just us, completely." 2 years passed since that night at Pulse. The life I built with Derek turned into something I never imagined possible. Our apartment, a duplex penthouse we bought together, became a strange but harmonious hybrid of minimalism and creative chaos. Half of it functioned as Derek's studio, as his design business expanded into a full agency. The other half retained the organization I still needed to function. Professionally, my career not only survived coming out, it flourished in unexpected ways. The diversity program I implemented at the bank became a model for the sector, attracting diverse talent who had traditionally steered clear of finance. I was invited to speak at Harvard about authentic leadership and inclusion in the financial sector. The most surprising transformation, however, happened within my family. After a period of adjustment, my parents began treating Derek like a son. My mom now regularly calls him to swap recipes. Apparently, Derek's roasted duck now outdoes hers, something she admits only to me. My father, at 70, surprised everyone by volunteering for an organization supporting young Asian LGBTQ+ individuals. But the deepest change occurred within me. The man who once lived fragmented in sealed compartments gradually learned to exist as an integrated whole. The barriers I built for self-protection became unnecessary once I discovered that my vulnerability was, in fact, my greatest strength. 6 months ago, we finalized the adoption of Grace, a 3-year-old girl who completely transformed our world once more. It was through her eyes that I realized the true meaning of legacy, not the material possessions or professional achievements I once valued, but the example of authenticity and courage we leave for the next generation. Last night, as Derek read Grace a bedtime story, I watched them from the doorway, this impulsive graphic designer who dared to break down my defenses, and this child who chose us as her family. I realized that my life had turned into a story I never would have dared write for myself. It all began with one moment of courage, walking into that club alone in search of a quiet drink. One single step out of my comfort zone that sparked a personal revolution. Many ask how I found the courage to confront Spencer Wilson, my parents, the bank, and my own fears. The truth is simpler than it seems. At some point, the cost of remaining the same became greater than the fear of change. And once you experience the freedom of living authentically, it becomes impossible to return to the shadows. Maybe you're watching this right now, contemplating your own moment of courage. Maybe there's a part of you just waiting to be recognized, a truth yearning to be expressed, a more authentic life waiting for your permission to start. Let me tell you something I learned in these 2 years. The first step is always the hardest. After that, every subsequent step strengthens your determination, and one day, you look back and can hardly recognize the prison you built for yourself. If my story touched you in any way, share in the comments a moment when you chose authenticity over safety. Every story shared creates space for someone else to find courage. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of personal transformation that prove that our vulnerability, when embraced completely, becomes our greatest strength. Because in the end, I discovered that being yourself isn't just an act of personal courage. It's the greatest love story you can ever live. A love story with yourself that paves the way for all other forms of love to find you. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like for more stories like this.